Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Good day again, viewers, and welcome to the program Agriculture on the Move. I am Philip Sidney, your host. Today we have a very interesting topic, and it's called Offshore Islands Conservation. Correction. And with me today, the two persons who are attached to the Department of Forestry. To my immediate right is Jeanette Victor, who is the forest officer, but she is attached to the Wildlife Conservation Unit. And we also have Mr. Pius Haynes, who is the Senior Wildlife Conservation Officer. Welcome to the program, lady and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good. We're talking about offshore islands. Yes, I'm thinking islands that are not attached to St. Lucia. Okay, tell me, Pius, what are offshore islands?
Generally, we can define an offshore island as a piece of land that is completely surrounded by water and is within close proximity to the mainland. Mm-hmm. Like in our case, we have approximately 20 pieces of what we call islet or rocks, within close proximity to the coast of mainland St. Lucia.
20?
Yeah, approximately 20.
Wow.
But then we focus our conservation efforts mainly on 5 of these offshore islands.
What are the names of those islands?
Right, so we have Rat Island in the north, that's just off the coast near Sandals, the northwestern portion of St. Lucia. Then we have Denry Island down off the coast of the Denry village. You could stay up by Mandalay Point and you could easily see Denry Island. And we have Prale Island, which is just off the coast of the Prale Bay. Right, and then we have Maria Minor and Maria Major in the south, off the coast of Sandy Beach.
So those are the 5 that you're focusing on?
These are the 5 main offshore islands that we focus all our conservation efforts on.
Why?
There are some other offshore islands of interest, like Scorpion Island and one called Lapping Island up in the north. But these are the 5 offshore islands that we see that contains the highest occurrence of wildlife.
So are you saying the other islands do not have wildlife?
The other islands, we're not quite sure, but in the principal reason as well for these offshore islands is that they are free from invasive alien predators. Okay. So you have no rats there, you have no mongooses, and this is a prime reason for having these as sanctuaries for wildlife.
But what do those islands mean to St. Lucia? What benefits do they have for St. Lucia?
Well, for wildlife conservation, which is number 1, we have a number of birds that go on these offshore islands for nesting. We have a number of reptiles. For example, on Maria Islands, we have approximately 5 endemic reptiles on Maria Islands. Also, it has benefits for us in terms of ecotourism. Persons would easily organize a tour with National Trust, for example, and they could go out and visit those offshore islands, and it just adds to our patrimony, St. Lucia. St. Lucia is only 238 square miles, and then we have these other offshore islands, that complement our island in terms of its surface area. Okay. Now, I must say, with regards to these offshore islands, we work in very, very close collaboration with the St. Lucia National Trust. So they have been one of our prime partners in conservation.
Okay, Ms. Victor, tell us about the species in those various islands. Can you be specific to, say, starting from Rat Island?
On Rat Island, we have the St. Lucia whiptail lizard. And that lizard was translocated there as part of conservation efforts. Because what we know that if we have like all our eggs in one basket, something goes wrong, then we lose that species. Okay. But as part of efforts to conserve the species, we translocated it to Rat Island. On Denway Island, currently we're doing conservation works like restoring the island. There was a large pond there with water that was being used for cane toad, as a cane toad nesting area. So that pond was covered with sand, soil, stones, and some wood. So it's now, the vegetation has grown, and we're now constantly doing monitoring of whatever is happening on Denway Island. On Priory Island, we also have the whiptail lizard that was part of translocation in 1995, I believe, from Maria Island.
Yeah, that's correct.
On Maria Island, we have the St. Lucia racer, which is the rarest snake in the world. And on Maria Minor, which is the smaller island to the Marias, we also have the St. Lucia whiptail there as well.
Okay.
We also have the pygmy gecko. We also have the St. Lucia anoles, and yeah, I believe that's
Those are birds.
No, those are all reptiles.
Oh, reptiles. Ah.
Yes, that's the reptiles
Yes.
Section.
he mentioned.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
But they are also birds, right?
Yes, the birds come like the
Scaly-necked pigeons.
scaly-necked pigeons. They come the nests, and all the seabirds, they come the nests right on the grass because there are no rats, no mungus, nothing to be eating the eggs. So it's like a safe haven for the birds as well.
Where those birds come from?
From all over. Some birds come as far from the Americas. They come to nest on the islands. Some of them, like the wamie, the scaly-necked pigeons, they come from the mainland, but because there is nothing to maybe predate on the eggs, they come there as well.
Okay. So what is done to protect those endemic species we have?
Right, so as you asked me earlier on, one of the main reasons for us being so interested in those offshore islands, and those offshore islands being of interest to St. Lucia, as we have said, is mainly for species conservation. Okay, now the key thing about these offshore islands that the mainland of St. Lucia cannot provide is a safe haven free from invasive alien species. That is the key thing.
Okay.
These islands have been cleared of all mammalian predators. So it therefore means that we have no cats on there, we have no dogs, we have no rats, no mongooses, nothing that would prey on these species because they are quite vulnerable. All right. Now, the Marias is actually a hotspot for biodiversity. Okay, as we've said, we have a number of reptile species there that are unique to Maria. We have 5 endemic species there, birds and so on. And if, for example, we were to take like the racer, in fact, it has been said that the racer was abundant all over St. Lucia, but because of the introduction of these mammalian predators like the mongoose and rats and dogs and so on, cats, it has caused the racer population to be extirpated on the mainland. So we do not have any more racers, St. Lucia racers on the mainland. And the safe haven is Maria, the Maria Major. Okay. So this is a key thing, that these islands, they're offshore. It means that they're off the coast of St. Lucia, they're completely surrounded by water, and they are free from invasive predators. And that's the key thing about it. And this is why it is so important.
So there's no way that the predators can swim across to Maria Island?
Well, that is possible because, you see, I mentioned earlier on that we have a total of approximately 20, rocks and offshore islands around St. Lucia, but we're focusing on these 5.
Okay.
All of these are within 1 kilometer off the coast of St. Lucia.
Okay, hold that point.
Sorry, 1 kilometer, sorry.
We're due for a first break, all right?
Wow.
You're watching Agriculture on the Move. Stay tuned, we'll be back soon.
The effective management of the marine resources depends heavily on compliance. To ensure that these resources continue to thrive and provide the best local seafood, fishers, vendors, and consumers must be aware of the fishery seasons. Here is the season chart for lobster. Adhere to the schedule. Help maintain a thriving fishing industry for all of us. This has been a message from the Department of Fisheries.
Welcome back to the program. We're talking about invasive species moving, predators moving to those islands. What is in place to ensure that mongoose don't swim across, or you have people with boats, wanting to go there and recreate, and in so doing, they may carry something across? Is that possible?
Okay, I mentioned earlier that we do monitoring on the islands, and that's one of our monitoring.
Okay.
We go onto the islands once every 4 weeks, so we visit an island each week. We do it in a 4-week rotation. When we get on there, first thing we do, we check the beach. So we ensure that we're able to capture whatever data, as in persons, there was anybody on the beach, did they leave any rubbish. Often we see fires on Rat Island and Praia Island. So persons go over there to have picnics, they leave their rubbish, and that encourages rats. They leave their bits of food. So every time we go on there, we record that. We also have bait stations installed on the island. So every time we go, we check whatever the bits in the stations. So we check, was it all eaten? Do we see any feces in there? Can we detect what ate the bits? We rebait the station, so we put 4 bits in each station. Again, we record that data, so it's able to assist us when we're doing any more management of that island. So we have bait stations on Rat Island, on Denway Island, on Praia Island, on the 2 Marias, and that has been done every 4 weeks. So once a week we go onto the
So
islands.
you'll know exactly if there's any rats.
Yes. So if the bait is like a rapid response, so if the rats are there, before maybe the next 3 weeks before you could get back onto the island, at least there is something there that will keep them at bay.
Okay.
So also if we walk along and we record whatever we see. So if we see any dead rats, that's of concern, that's something. And we also, most times we take away whatever garbage that is left there. I've gone on Praia Island and I've seen stuff like ripe bananas, breadfruits. And of course, if there is a rat, then after the rat is done eating that, it will more or less go and try to eat whatever lizards or whatever that it could get. So yes, we do the monitoring on all the islands, and we ensure that we keep it invasive free as possible.
So we actually have to broaden on what she says, we actually have a biosecurity protocol in place for these offshore islands. And this is precisely to prevent the incursion or the invasion of the island by these predators. Okay, so this biosecurity protocol has 3 main components. So the first one that she described was the prevention. Okay, as they say, prevention is better than cure. So we try as much as possible to prevent these invasive species from reaching there in the first place. So before anybody sets out to the offshore islands on any vessel, any boat, we admonish that they recheck, they double check their gear, the equipment, the boat, check to see if there's any rat hiding somewhere, maybe in the boat somewhere, or in some container or whatever.
Okay.
We even look out for things like seeds, the seeds of plants, because we also have invasive plants as well. So we check out for the seeds of these plants, make sure our shoes don't carry them, our clothing, and so on. And not only do we check for these mammalian predators, but we have to check for things like, as we said, invasive plants, invasive ants as well. We have some ants that are devastated to these invasive ants. And so we do these checks on the beach before we set out, of our person, of our equipment, our baggage, and we go. And then the second phase of it is what you call surveillance. All right, that's why we have the bait stations in place. So on each of these islands, we have these, as you mentioned, the bait stations. And the bait station has mainly 2 functions: to detect whether there are any rats on island, because you have chocolate wax. If they bite for the chocolate, you could see the teeth marks. And then you also have the poison bait in the bait station that they can also take it and they'll be dead.
Okay.
And the third phase is what you refer to as the rapid response. So if we check that there is any incursion, if there are any rats or mongooses, then we just do a rapid eradication to prevent them from multiplying, to prevent them from establishing themselves on the offshore island.
But you ever had any concerns with any invasive species getting onto those islands?
I mean, the risk is always there because of the human factor and so on. and also because of the close proximity to the mainland of St. Lucia.
Okay.
Sometimes, a rat could swim. Rats have been said, it has been said that rats could swim up to about 1 kilometer.
That's right.
Okay, so they have that potential.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, also on driftwood
Right.
and these kind of things.
Correct.
So this is why we have these protocols in place to make sure that these things don't
Okay,
happen.
you all work in tandem with National Trust.
Yes, we
Good.
do.
So, what's the protocol if somebody wants to go across to those islands?
All right, so the Maria Islands, both minor and major, January Island, these islands have been vested in National Trust, the St. Lucia National Trust. So persons venturing on these islands, they have to seek permission from the National Trust, and there are also organized tours that they conduct. Okay, so they have to go through National Trust in order to access those islands.
Okay.
We typically would like persons to, we are not saying that persons should not be going and enjoy that portion of St. Lucia, but we are admonishing persons to seek permission, okay, seek due authorization so that you can be on these offshore islands. So you can know, because whenever you contact National Trust or Forestry, then we educate you on the do's and don'ts, okay? Because once you get onto the island, then there are a few things that we do not that we advise against. Mm-hmm. For example, we do not like persons lighting fires, because just one fire could just devastate the entire offshore island. And that's one of the other major risks, apart from the invasive alien species, wildfire, or just a fire. Okay. Imagine you have a fire on Maria in the dry season,
yes,
or on Rat Island. Mm-hmm. It'll just burn up the
entire area. Mm-hmm.
Okay, mm-hmm. So that's a concern for us. And the litter, we ask persons, to do not litter. Make sure if you get there, comport yourself in such a manner that when you come out with all your garbage. Do not leave food stuff on the offshore islands, to feed the animals. Persons go there, they feed the animals. Persons have even gone as far as persecuting whiptail lizards. We have found cases where whiptail lizards have been bitten or chopped. What? Yeah, on Prale Island and so on. So we have major problems with persons venturing without authorization. So that is why we admonish persons seek authorization from.
So if on your normal traverse you find a boat going there, what do you all do?
Right. So in the case of the Marias, Maria is a nature reserve. Mm-hmm. Okay. So boats are not to land on Maria without authorization. Okay. It's off limits.
Right.
All right. So we have that piece of legislation to assist us in that regard. So we can turn away all boats legally.
So you call the police and
we can call the police, and they are outright. They're not supposed to be there because it's a nature reserve. It's a marine reserve and a wildlife reserve. Mm-hmm. Coming together as a nature reserve. Okay. We do not have the same status for the other offshore islands, like Dennery and Prale.
Okay, but hold that point again. Yes. We'll do for another break. You're watching Agriculture on the Move. Stay tuned.
Mama. What's in the food you're eating? Do you really even know? All the chemicals and hormones used to accelerate their growth. All the artificial flavoring, sweeteners and colors too. We consume and we don't spare a thought for the damage that they'll do. No, think about the children. Think about the children. How will we save them? Chemicals and GMOs are not the solution. Use organic and join revolution.
Excessive agrochemical use, additives, and genetically modified foods are harmful to health and the environment. Join the good food revolution. Grow, buy, and consume organic. A message from Rise St. Lucia and the Ministry of Sustainable Development with funding from the GEF Small Grants Program, UNDP.
The good food revolution.
Welcome back. Ms. Victor, tell me about the birds that come in to nest. Do you all have any information that you'll collect data on those birds that come in to lay, and to give you an idea of, the number of eggs and how many of those birds hatch? And you all don't keep any?
What we do, most of the birds come on Dennery Island and on Maria Island.
Okay.
What we do during our normal walk, in our normal monitoring efforts, we just make a note of whatever birds that we see. So most times you get doves, like the Zenaida doves. We get scaly pigeons or the ramie. We also get some seabirds, we also get herons as well. The seabirds as red-billed tropic birds, brown boobies,
It's a lot, man.
sooty terns,
Ah.
American.
Oyster
We've seen
catcher.
the American oyster catcher there as well. So
Bridal terns and
bridal terns, yeah. Some of the seabirds come in during the winter period.
Okay.
So they come, they nest, they feed, and then they off again. So for some parts of the year, it's very, I must say, a very tedious task to go onto the islands, because every step that you do,
They watch when you put
there are the birds,
Yeah,
eggs, or
birds
birds,
nesting right
or
there.
little
Wow.
birds fly
On the
out,
ground.
flying
Okay.
out, chicks flying out. So it's a beauty to see that the birds are actually nesting on the grass.
So the lizard does not interfere with them?
no,
The
they
eggs?
don't.
no, they don't.
Ah,
No.
No, they
okay,
don't.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move forward. It's a bit ticklish question I want to ask in that. Development in the south. Okay? We are told that there may be the joining of the island, like what happened to Pigeon Island. Okay? What are your thoughts in that regard? It's basic. I'm look at it from a conservationist point of view.
Right. Well, as we've said, if we look at the wildlife composition of St. Lucia, in terms of the abundance of species, in terms of the occurrence of species, the Maria Islands would be considered to be one of the major, if not the wildlife or biodiversity hotspot in St. Lucia.
Okay.
Okay, so as we mentioned, not only does it provide a home or a sanctuary for reptiles, birds, and so on, we also have, but of course, the flora species there as well. From a conservationist standpoint, if we were to install, or if we were to establish a causeway to join the mainland to the offshore island, then I think we're going to be doing ourselves a disservice in terms of wildlife conservation, because we're just putting a bridge in there for the very same invasive species that we want to prevent from coming onto the offshore island.
They can get the
They can just get there ad lib easily without any. So right now, as it stands, the sea in itself provides like the perfect barrier. Had it not been for this channel between the coast of Sandy Beach and Maria's, then we would not have had any of these reptiles anymore.
Okay.
Because you'd have had these invasive species on there, and they would have feasted on the St. Lucia racer snake and the others. Okay, now I want persons to understand that the St. Lucia racer is non-venomous. It's a very gentle snake, possesses no venom. It is not a threat to anybody. Okay, it is just part of our natural biodiversity, and it's part of our patrimony.
Let's look at Rat Island. Okay, what do you think is going to be a better way to ensure that Rat Island, it's to the north, we're looking at tourism industry. Many persons I know have interest in getting to use there. I know years ago, school holidays, there were families who were going there and spending the entire 6 weeks there with their families. It used to be a place, to recreate. Do you think that can come back? You can create a system that can be in tandem with whatever wildlife that you have there?
Well, there was a plan. I think Derek Walcott had a plan to
Correct.
construct it was an art museum or something relating to the arts and so on. And the possibility exists, because Rat Island, even back in the days, there's currently a structure on Rat Island. It's all in ruins, but then that structure existed. Now we have the St. Lucia whiptail lizards, which have been translocated there in 2008, thereabout. However, the possibility exists for coexisting of
right.
these.
Exactly.
Okay, so we can set it up in such a way that we could have both conservation and development happening in synergy with each other.
Great. As we're about to end, any final words from you, Ms. Victor?
I would just like to urge persons that if they visit the islands, of course it's a beauty to visit. Just leave with your garbage, so that way it helps us in the conservation efforts of not having any invasive species and rats on the island, and also to just protect and help us conserve as much as possible.
Okay. Ms. Bios?
Right. So the offshore islands we have around the coast of St. Lucia, to us, they're very important, and we would like to urge persons, to gain more knowledge, get to know more about these offshore islands, because it's important for us for the conservation of our biodiversity. It's important for us for recreation. It has many uses that we could put it to. So we need to learn to appreciate them, and learn to see them as part of our patrimony.
But do you have, as we end, a continuous education program so that people will know exactly the do's and the don'ts? Because I'm sure there are lots of persons who don't know.
Yes, I mean, in that area we can do a lot better to teach persons, about the importance of the offshore islands as nature sanctuaries and so on. National Trust is doing a bit of this, and also Forestry does that through our environment education unit. But I must confess that we need to augment it and and make it more substantial, so that persons could really, it could be in the face of the public, so that no one will say I didn't know or something like this. So we need to do more of that.
Yeah, definitely, I think so, because people have been asking whether they can go there, what they can do, what they should not do. So certain persons want to get there to recreate, and I don't think we are taking cognizance of this in terms of our tourism industry, and also the locals. We want to utilize our resource and to enjoy our resource, so I'm thinking here we need with this education in that regard.
Yeah, so what we're doing there right now,
that's what part of it.
Yes, that's a part of it. So we should be continuing
yes,
these
totally
and making persons be more aware
definitely
of what we have in St. Lucia. St. Lucia is a small island, but then we have a lot to offer.
Definitely.
Because we have high level of endemicity. And many of the other islands in the Eastern Caribbean don't even have one endemic bird and so on, but we have 5.
Okay.
And we have so many reptiles that are endemic here, so we should be proud of ourselves.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Pius, and thank you, Ms. Victor, for being here. I wish you all success. I know it's a bit challenging to ensure that, I think you're doing a good job, because up to now I don't think you have any invasive species over there. So I want to thank you all for this, and to ensure that our children and our grandchildren coming, they can enjoy our natural resource. Thank you again for being here.
Thanks.
You've been watching Agriculture on the Move. I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for viewing, and please educate yourself. If you don't know about the offshore islands, Forestry Department can alert you, and also National Trust can, in collaboration with Forestry Department, can assist you to ensuring the use of those islands. Thank you again for viewing. I'm Philip Sidney. Goodbye. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paris. Welcome.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agricole en mouvement.